All right, I guess I have to be formally introduced.
Okay, so we have our club members.
Good evening, everybody.
Music.
Oh, right.
Because it's too loud.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the event. My name is Gavin Provis. I'm the president of the Creativity Club.
And my name is Lauren Little, and I'm the vice president of the Creativity Club.
Right. Yes. So first, I want to thank all of you for coming, and then I want to thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Voro, and then also thank our guest speaker, Professor Boyd. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Creativity Club does and what the organization's about. So basically, we like to cover all aspects of creativity through different sessions and workshops like this one. And yeah, we just like to go through all different types of creativity, and we like to, we're not specified on any specific part of it. Like, we're not just music, we're not just art or anything like that. We just, anybody that's interested in, putting their ideas together and working with each other. So yeah.
And a little bit about our guest here. Drew Boyd is a global leader in creativity and innovation, and he's a published author and inventor, and he's currently the professor at the University of Cincinnati. So let's all give a big warm welcome to Drew Boyd and
Well, we have a nice, warm group. I'm going to just sit here. Every so often I'll have to run up. I think I lost my slide advancer, but that's okay. The goals of your club are noble, right? And I'm really happy to be here. I always love talking about this. What I'm going to do is teach you how to use your brain in a different way. You're already creative people. Unlike many people who don't think they're creative, you work in an environment and train in an environment where creativity is sort of a given. But even for people that are highly creative, do you consider yourself creative? Yeah. But even for people that consider themselves creative, you'd be surprised how many people say, not a lick, not zero, I'm not creative at all. What I'm going to show you today is how to take your creative thinking up, no matter where you are on the creativity scale. If you're down here low, or if you're up here, or anywhere in the middle, we're going to get you to increase your creative output. Now, a lot of people, when I speak to people in the world about this, and I do a lot of that, a lot of people don't believe that. They say, nah, you can't really do that. But it's true. I'm going to go ahead and share a few slides with you that explain this. Let's see. All right. Okay, great. So I have a few slides that I just want to share with you to cover this idea. This one is probably the most important because it shows my brand new 7-month-old grandson who is the best. I have a variety of activities. One of the things that I was telling you right now, one of the things that I love to do is work with our College of Music at the University of Cincinnati. I'm a core musician, but what I do is I make acoustic guitars. And I really love making acoustic and also classical nylon string guitars and stringed instruments in general. I've been doing it for about 8 years now. And it's really fun. Even have my own label, the Boyd headstock, which you see there. I like to fish. I love to teach. Love to be here with you folks. And let's make this very, very powerful for you and useful for you. Mentioned that I speak to a lot of companies around the world. I was just in Manila about a month ago. I'm going to Germany in May. I travel a lot, and I love travel. And it's good, but mostly what I like is I like being in client. I like being with really passionate people. Your faculty advisor, Rita, talks a lot about passion, right? And this is so important. And I like to be with people that are passionate, that are smart, that want to make the world a better place. And that's what I'm guessing. You would take the time to come here and listen to me. You're one of those people. So I speak to companies in different industries, aerospace, pharmaceutical, Retail, Macy's, for example, is one of my clients. A lot of work in the financial sector, healthcare, a lot of fun. And, but first and foremost, my passion is being here with you people. You know, we all want to be creative, and people are frustrated because they just don't know how to do it, and I'm going to show you the guidelines. Imagine going to your boss and saying, yeah, I'd be happy to give you innovative thinking. What are the guidelines? Here's what blocks you. Here is what is your chief barrier to creative thinking. We all have a cognitive condition called fixedness. Fixedness is a cognitive bias that makes it very hard for you to consider a different idea than what you know. And just like this quote says, I love this quote, people are very open-minded about anything, so long as they're exactly like the old ones. It's hard, and we all have fixedness. And it's not a shame to have fixedness. In fact, fixedness is a very important characteristic of people. And I'm going to send these slides to you. You're welcome to any of the slides that I have. We all have fixedness. In fact, it's a good thing we have fixedness. Fixedness is how we understand our world. Fixedness is how we organize our life, how we get to school, how we dress in the morning. If you didn't have fixedness, here's what would happen. You'd come up to a red light, driving in a car, and you'd look up and go, hey, what does the red one mean? What does that red light mean? And what am I supposed to press here? Which of these pedals am I supposed to press? That'd be rough if you had to relearn it every time. So our learned structures create this fixedness, which comes in handy, very useful day in, day out. But when you want to be creative, you need a way to break it. You need a way to recognize it. And that's what I'm going to show you tonight. You're going to experience your fixedness in just a few minutes. That sounds creepy, doesn't it?
You're going to experience your fixedness.
How many of you heard this phrase, think outside the box? Have you ever used this phrase? Have you ever used this phrase before?
Probably.
Probably. Maybe even today. Have you used it today? We use it a lot. We all use it. Do you use this phrase? Think outside the box? Think outside the box? Not as much. In certain cultures, for example, in China, it doesn't mean anything. Think outside the box. It's primarily a Western idea. Think outside. Let me tell you where this idea comes from. Think outside the box. It's a very popular phrase. It's a phrase that comes from this famous puzzle, which I'm willing to bet some of you have seen. Have you seen the puzzle before? In the
Yes.
Creativity Club? Have you all seen that puzzle? You haven't seen it? It's called the 9-dot puzzle. And it's a puzzle because you have to take your pencil and with just 4 straight lines, connect all 9 dots without lifting your pencil. Okay, it's tricky. What's the secret? How do you solve the puzzle? Do you know? You know? How do you solve the puzzle?
You go outside of the
You go outside the box. Exactly right. You fool the system. You draw one line like this, but then your other line, you come outside this area created by the nine dots. And that gives you this angle then to come back down again, also again outside the box. And then finally you complete the puzzle this way. That's one of several solutions. But the story of this puzzle is what's interesting. This puzzle was used in the 1970s by a researcher named P.J. Guilford. And when Guilford administered this puzzle to people, he found that only about 20% of people could solve this puzzle. 20%. And so he thought to himself, gee, if we could just get people to think outside the box, they could be more creative. And boy, that phrase became really popular. I mean, it just spread the globe like wildfire. People were running around, think outside the box, think outside the box. There's just one problem. Nobody knows about the 2 other researchers who did the exact same study right after Guilford, used the same puzzle, same instructions, but added a second group to their puzzle, to their study. The first group of participants were told the same instructions that Guilford gave his study subjects. The second group was given the same instructions as the first group, plus the added instructions that to solve the puzzle, you had to draw your lines outside the box created by the 9 dots. Essentially got the answer. Well, in the first group, just like Guilford, 20% or so could solve it. What do you think was the success rate? What do you think was the success rate of the second group? What would you think? Take a guess. Still 20%. You're a troublemaker. Yes, you're exactly right. Still 20%, but you're right. Most people would think it was 80%, 90%. It was still 20%. There was no change. Thinking outside the box didn't improve their thinking whatsoever. And I want you to now realize that while you'll continue to hear this phrase forever and ever, I hate to say it, but thinking outside the box is a myth. It's a myth because what happens to the human brain when we send our mind out into what I'll call a brainstorming scenario, when we try to be creative in a vast, very wide open space, this happens. Your mind gets cluttered, it gets overwhelmed, it suffers idea chaos or idea anarchy. Your mind is looking around for an idea, and generally what it comes up with is something it already knew. It's very hard to think unconstrained, outside the box, brainstorming, and come up with an original idea. It's been shown in studies for 60 years. It doesn't work. What I'm going to show you is how to think inside the box. We're going to talk about the techniques that you want to use and what you want to think, especially in music. Are you all in music? I know you're not in music necessarily. Are you in music? Yep. Okay, musicians. What do you study? Say again?
Biology.
Biology. Okay, great. Maybe you should leave.
I'm in.
You're all in? You stay? Okay. I tease them. You're more than welcome. Glad. We'll talk about your roles too. So what does work? Well, let's look at some examples. What do we know from looking at some of the most creative people in the world? What do we know by looking at somebody like the Beatles, arguably the most successful rock band in history? Some would dispute that. They've sold more albums in the U.S. than any. Paul McCartney, this character right here, he's interesting. At one point in his career, he had not one, but 2 of the top 10 best-selling songs of all time. Billion-dollar selling songs. Now, it's remarkable to have $1 billion selling songs, but to have 2? How did he do that? Well, there are several biographies written about Paul, and I was fascinated with him, and I went and read these biographies, and I found a very subtle but interesting passage in one of those books. And here's what it said. As usual for these co-written things, John often had just the first verse, which was always enough. It was the direction, it was the signpost, and it was the inspiration for the whole song. I hate the word, but it was the template. Paul and John had a series of patterns or templates, structures that they used to create all those great songs before they came to the U.S. Oh, and they're not the only songwriters and composers that use structures and patterns. Other songwriters, Taylor Swift, Wagner, you go back as far as you want, they use structures. It's not just songwriters. If you look at artists like Picasso, or Dali, or Pollock, or Miro, the great artists, guess what? They all use a structure in their paintings too. You know what a Picasso looks like? Would you recognize a Picasso, do you think, if you saw them? Only the famous ones? You know the famous ones, but what if you saw something that was similar to the famous ones? Would you recognize it as similar to the famous ones? Probably. You would recognize the underlying structure of a Picasso, even if you'd never seen it before. You'd say, it looks like a Picasso. Right? Am I right? Guess what? It's authors, famous authors. Agatha Christie, you've probably never heard of her. Agatha Christie murder mystery novels. You read those as a kid. She wrote 62 murder mystery novels. Each one of them used the exact same pattern inside, the same structure. Your mom probably reads Daniel Steele, or maybe you read Daniel Steele. Daniel Steele does. John Grisham. Great, great authors, and maybe not so famous authors like Drew Boyd. I use structures. I use patterns in my creative work. Poets, Robert Frost. Pattern, pattern, pattern. They all use patterns. And the question I have for you is this. Why do they hate the word? Why don't they want us to know about their patterns? Why do you think? Why do you think the creative people don't want us to know about their patterns? Why?
Because it shows that it was easier than we think.
It shows it was easier than we think. It doesn't seem creative to use a pattern, when it was the pattern that boosted their creative output of already highly talented people. And the question I have for you, people, is, hey, what about everyday folks here in Kentucky or Cincinnati, Ohio, or in Russia, or in Japan, anywhere? What about everyday people? And what if you wrote a song using Paul McCartney's pattern? Would you end up with $1 billion selling song?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Well, here's what I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet you would end up with a more creative song using his pattern than if you didn't. That's all. Patterns can boost your creative output, each and every one of you. And by the way, it's not just highly creative people that use patterns. Here's the really interesting story. Everyday inventors and innovators for thousands of years have used patterns in their inventions, usually without even realizing it. Those patterns are now embedded into the products and services you see around you every day. Think of those patterns as the DNA of a product or service. What if you had a way to look at that product or service and extract that DNA and reapply it to something you wanted to innovate? A musical piece, a stage production, a biology experiment, a medical product, a book, college. That's what we're doing. And I'm introducing you to a method that goes by the name Systematic Inventive Thinking. It's based on a very brilliant work by my co-author, this guy, Dr. Jacob Goldenberg. What Jacob did was very interesting for his research. He studied highly innovative products. Initially to find out what made them different from one another. And what he found instead is that, highly innovative products tend to have more in common with one another. That they tend to follow patterns, much to everybody's surprise. What's even more surprising is this. Most innovations in the world can be explained with just 5 patterns. That's it. 5 patterns. Subtraction. A lot of inventions are created when you force yourself to take something out of the system rather than adding new systems and functions. Taskification. A lot of inventions occur when you force a component to do the job of an existing component, something that wasn't originally designed to. You force a resource to do additional work in a way that wasn't thought of before. Multiplication. Many inventions are created by taking some component, you copy it, but change it some counterintuitive way, some way that wasn't expected, some surprising way. Division. A lot of inventions are created when you divide, cut a product or a component or service physically or functionally, and then you rearrange it somehow back into the system. And then finally, attribute dependency. Many innovations, in fact, the majority of innovations, are created when you force a dependency between 2 things. One is an attribute of the thing you're trying to innovate. The other is an attribute of its immediate environment. As one thing changes, another thing changes. So do you know the product transition sunglasses? You ever heard of this product? You know what that is? As the light outside gets bright, the lens gets. Or in cars, you'll see windshield wipers. Some windshield wipers, they'll change speed automatically and then slow down again, depending on what? How much it's raining, the amount of rain. That is a classic example of attribute dependency. These patterns are all around you. Every one of those patterns is in this room right now. And I could go through and look for them and find them very easily for you. These patterns are around you every day. And all you need to do to learn this method is understand these patterns and see how they work. And then I'm going to show you how to use them actually in your mind. You ready? You still worried about this fixing this thing? It's coming. It's coming. Let's talk about these patterns. How do you actually use these patterns? Well, here's the fascinating part of this. This may be the hardest one for you to buy into. Most people think the way you innovate something, the way you create, is you start with a problem, and then you work towards some solution to that problem. If I ask you which comes first, the problem or the solution, what would you say? The problem comes first. If you ask CEOs that, if you ask third graders that, they'll tell you the same thing. Well, I have some news for you. What if, in fact, there was another way to think about this? Another direction of thought? What if, in fact, you could go from the solution that you don't know what it does, and only then connect it back to the problem that it works with? Seems strange? Guess what? Humans are actually better at this direction than the other direction. I want you to imagine I'm holding a baby's milk bottle. This milk bottle changes color when the temperature of the milk changes. Quickly, why is that a benefit? Why would that be a benefit?
You don't want the baby to be burned.
You don't want the baby to be burned. Okay? Do you have children?
No.
Do you have no babies? No? Okay. You got that pretty quickly. Did you think of it too? You all thought of it. Anywhere in the world, any society immediately gets that. Very good. How long did it take you to come up with that, roughly? Not even 3 seconds, maybe 0.3 seconds. Very, very quickly. Okay, good. Now, let's do it again. But this time, what if I said, hey folks, we need to come up with a way on how not to burn a baby with milk that's too hot. No problem. How long would it take you right now to come up with color-changing milk bottle? 3 years? If you're lucky. If you're lucky. Yeah, it's certainly a lot longer. I'm not saying you wouldn't come up with other solutions, but that solution would take you a very long time to come up with. And so do you see what's happening here? What this method will do for you is create the solutions that will force you to create things like a color-changing milk bottle. And then all you have to do is use your natural human talents to connect it back to a problem that it solves. Let me teach you the method. Let me teach you how to use it. And again, we'll practice it on something. We'll leave time for questions and discussion. I know some of you like a book, and I'm happy to sign that if that's of interest to you as well. Here are the steps that you use to follow the SIT method. And again, we'll send these slides out to you. And this is also in the book. I know it looks complicated, but it's really not. Follow along with me. To use the SIT method, we always start with some existing situation. That situation could be a piece of music. It could be one part of an orchestra. It could be one part of a college, one part of a theatrical performance. We start with some existing situation, then we draw a circle around it. We call it the closed world. We define this very tightly bound inside the box. We create a box around it, the closed world, the box of the closed world. And then we apply one of the thinking tools, one of the tools I just explained to you. One at a time. You apply division or task identification, doesn't matter. When you apply the thinking tool to the original situation, it changes it. It morphs it into something that honestly will look very weird at first. We call that thing a virtual product, doesn't really exist. It's just a concept in your mind, virtual product in your mind. And this is where you're going to experience fixedness. Remember, you're going to experience it in about 3 minutes. And then comes I would say, the fun part and the hard part of the method. You look at the virtual product, and you ask yourself 2 questions, but always in this order. Never the other way around. And this, my friends, is where people struggle with this method. Remembering the order. If you get the order right, you're going to be fine. The first question we always ask ourselves is, should we do it? Who would want this? In what situations would it be really amazing? Is there a market for a color-changing mobile? What's the benefit? Remember that? You did that without even realizing it. You saw the benefit right away. They call it the market filter, sort of the business filter. If you find a benefit, and only then do you ask yourself the second question is, can we do it? Do we have the know-how? Do we know how to make this? Do we have the materials, the chemistry, the physics? Do we have legal problems or regulatory issues? Is there a way for us to do this? Can you do it? And if technically yes, you allow yourself some adaptations. You work through this in a structured way. If you do it correctly, you will end up at the end with what I would consider, and only then would I consider it, an idea. Something you can test. We call this function follows form. Do you see how that's backwards from the normal way people say it? Right? The people in the design school and architecture, what do they love to say? Oh, form follows function. But here in creativity, we turn that around. We really do want the function to follow the form. The method creates the form for you. You figure out what it does. What do we say we learn our first technique? We learn a technique, we're going to apply it. I'm going to talk to you about how you might use it in your studies, in your life. Leave time for questions. Let's learn our first technique. I want you to take a look at these 4 items. Just tell me, what do these have in common? This is a package of powdered soup. This is a regular contact lens. This is an exercise bicycle. And this is a child's high chair, the kind that you would slip over the edge of the kitchen table. Look at those 4 items and tell me, what do they have in common? Ava, do you see? Try it. What do they have in common? Shout it out. Try it.
The usual plastics.
Well, they have some plastics in them. That's maybe true, not what I'm looking for. Keep going. This is hard.
They're all related to things people do every day.
There are things that people use every day. Also true, not what I'm looking for. Keep looking. What do these items have in common? Any guesses? It's tough. It's a tough question. Look at each item, and you might notice that they also came in a simpler version or a different form, and now they've changed. How did they go from the previous form to this? Any guesses now? Yeah.
They're all like items that were made to be more convenient.
True, but not what I'm looking for. But you're on the right track, kind of. They became more convenient because of something that changed in each one of them. How did they become more convenient? You see it? It's a puzzle. I can see you thinking hard. Smoke coming out of your body and electricity.
Subtractions.
What? Subtraction? What do you mean by that? You happen to be right.
So for the high chair, it takes away
The legs.
the legs.
All right, you're exactly right. In each case, something has been subtracted from the original version. Very good. What led you to that?
Just thinking.
Just thinking, good, good. What's been taken out of here? What's been subtracted out of here? The liquid. Here,
The frame,
and here,
the wheel.
here, and very good. This is a subtraction technique. And this is what I mean by, if you learn this method, you won't be able to look at something without recognizing a pattern. You'll be able to see these patterns all the time in your life if you open your eyes to them and do this wonderful thing called thinking. Subtraction. Let's learn how to use subtraction. To use subtraction, you follow these steps. First step of subtraction is to list the components, what I call the internal components. And then we pick one, preferably an essential one. When we remove it, it becomes that thing we call the virtual product. Remember, you're going to experience your fixedness. And then we ask ourselves the two questions. What's the first question always? Should we do it? If we find a benefit, then we go to the second question, which is, can we do it? Now, with this technique, you're allowed to replace the original function, but not with the original component, with something that is in the immediate vicinity, which I'll explain in a minute. And then you modify the new product. So all the techniques have this simple steps that you follow. And they're outlined very clearly in the book, if you want to learn this method. Let's practice it. Let's practice it on an everyday product like this. This is just a flat screen TV, right? I know you guys are in school and you're not allowed to watch TV here at the University of Kentucky. Trust me, there are these things called TVs. Right? So what is the first step of subtraction?
Or taking an essential part.
No, but you're not alone. Everybody says the same thing. Remember the first step? List the components. Okay, and the point I'm making is, if you're going to use this method, you have to use and follow the steps exactly the way I'm teaching it. Otherwise, you won't get good results. So we list the components. What are the components of a flat screen TV? Pick one.
Cords.
The cords. Screen.
The thing around the screen.
The frame.
The frame. The actual base of
The base. What else?
The TV remote.
The TV remote. Anything else?
The back cover, I presume.
There's a back cover on it. All right. So we would make a list that looks like this. The screen, the speakers, the frame around it, the stand, the cords, the inputs, the remote. That's it. TVs are pretty simple. Now notice a couple things. I always number the list. And notice that it's not every tiny little component. It's the major components. Okay? That's how we start. We list the components. All right. Now, let's go to step 2. We're going to take a component away. Ava, what component would you like to take away?
The stand.
The stand. Okay. Now, everybody look at me. Why did you take away the screen? Say it.
See the screen.
Say it a little louder. Louder.
You have to see the screen.
What's that condition called? That is called fixedness right there. That is called fixedness. You need the screen to see the TV. I'm not saying it's not true. What I am saying is that's what fixedness sounds like. And she was courageous enough to say it. I'm willing to bet you all thought it. All right? Okay. Let's be true to the process. Let's take out the screen of the TV. We have no screen. What do we have here?
Frame.
A frame. What do we have here? What would you call it?
It's essentially just a glorified podcast machine at that
A
point.
glorified podcast machine, okay. Why don't we do this? We're just gonna give it a name. And all we do at this step very simply is say, we have a screenless TV. That's all. We don't put, it's called a radio or a projector or a box or anything. We just call it a screenless TV, that's all. Clear? Okay. Now, we ask ourselves two questions. What's always the first question? What? Should we do it?
Should be good.
Should we do it? Yeah. First question always, should we do it? All right, I'm going to ask you, not that we're going to, but if you took out if you took out the screen of a TV, what would be some of the benefits?
You don't need to look at it.
You don't have to look at it. What else? What else?
You want to have, like, you could put it anywhere.
You can put it anywhere, it's
Not
gonna
have to
be-
worry about, like, where you have to sit to watch it.
You don't have to, it's going to be a lot smaller. You can put it anywhere. It's going to be more mobile. Heck, if you took the TV, the screen on the TV, what else is a benefit?
Save electricity.
It's what?
I save electricity.
Less electricity, going to save electricity, more reliable, less likely to break. If you can see through it, yeah. What about this? A lot less cheap, a lot less expensive, a lot cheaper. A lot of benefits to a screenless TV. Would you use a screenless TV?
Maybe.
Who would use a screenless TV? Shout it out, tell me. Say it.
Bus drivers.
People that might have visual impairment. But what about you all? How many times have you been in your home and had the TV on? You're cooking or cleaning or talking to somebody and you're not watching it, you're listening to it. Raise your hand if you've ever done that. Come on, you've all done it. Have you done it? Yes, you've done it. It was mad at me because I picked on her. She's not talking to me. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, you know, what's interesting, folks, honestly, listen. A screenless TV already exists. It's called Sirius XM Radio. And it broadcasts true TV channels. What would people listen to instead of watch? What kinds of shows?
The radio drama.
Could be radio drama, could be TV drama. What else? News, sports, weather, classic TV shows, all the great famous TV shows like Bachelorette. No. Yeah, screenless TV already exists. But I want you to play the tape back and just recall when I pushed on Ava to take out the screen, and her reaction was priceless and so classic. You need the screen to see it. Yet there are many, many benefits of a screenless TV, like I said, that already exist today. This is the subtraction technique. It's very powerful. We use it all the time for training. When we initially teach people, we start with this technique because it gets you to understand the principle of fixedness and understand how your mind is so locked in on what you know. It's hard to imagine taking a piece out of the equation. Let's talk about, keep track of our time here. Let's talk a little bit about how you would use this in your life, especially in music. Let's start with music, and we can go to any of your careers, fields of study. Imagine you wanted to create ideas about a simple piece of music. What would you consider a simple piece of music? What's one that you know very well?
Happy birthday.
Happy Birthday, very a classic song, right? I didn't mean that simple, but that's fine. That's fine. Let's take Happy Birthday. Imagine listing the song out. We would list the components of the song. And the components of the song would be the notes, right? It would be the key, potentially. We would list other components of the song. And imagine if we took one away. What if you took away a particular phrase, what if you took away a particular phrase of the song? You're going to eliminate the third phrase, for example. What if you were forced to restrict yourself to just one, on a guitar, for example, one string? What if you had to play the song just on one string? What would it force you to do? It'd force you to be more creative. And in music, with music and with anything in the arts of production, this is how we would use it to create new and interesting ideas. With piano, you can imagine looking at our starting point as the piano itself. You're a piano major. Are you a piano major too? Okay, and you?
Piano minor.
Piano minor, okay. And you're you're the computer person too. You're the computer
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
okay. So imagine this beautiful thing called piano behind me. We would make a list of the components of a piano, and we could apply subtraction to create some new and interesting creative things for it. For example, what if we said, you can play this piece, but you can't use the middle pedal. You can play this piece, but you can't sit. You can play this piece, but you can only use the black keys. You can play this, you can use this piano, but you have to play it only at a certain speed. So by changing it and morphing it and looking at each step as a virtual product, I would go through very quickly and start to recognize and see new opportunities I hadn't seen before. That's essentially what the method does. You take a structure, you alter it with some technique, but always taking out a component you thought you needed. That's going to allow you to say, that's weird, but what would be the benefit? What would be the benefit of playing the piano without a seat? Force yourself. What would be the benefit of playing the piano without a seat? Potentially more energy off to the audience, perhaps more leverage. You're above it. You have better visibility of the keys. Right? I'm not a piano player, but all of a sudden I'm thinking, the keyboard is flat. You're sitting there. You have this sort of structure. If you're up, now you have more control and force this way, more visibility. This is why I wonder why keyboards are more up and tilted towards us. Okay, now what about the world of biology? What kinds of things do you study? What kind of job do you expect yourself to have someday?
Well, I have to be in academia, but a lot of the problems that we face have to do with theoretical equations. So there's a
Okay.
variable that equals some equation and some other variables.
In biology? Yeah.
Ecology,
Ecology? Okay. So, well, how do you use this in those contexts? What's really important in that context is how you define your starting point. What am I defining here? If you're dealing with a closed system, that closed system has every piece that's required. Otherwise, it would break the system, right? So when you apply subtraction, you imagine removing one, not because you're going to permanently, but because it would allow you to then say, if it didn't exist, if it was out of the system, what would be the benefit, either to the organism, to the system, and step by step, you will see new benefits you hadn't considered before. You know, we go through school and we're taught how to create elegant structures. We're taught how to create fixedness. We're taught through a lens of fixedness. Engineers, scientists, musicians, all kinds of people. You're given structures, which is great. Structures matter. But when you want to be creative, you need a way to break through those structures. And the SIT method, using one technique alone today, like subtraction, remember there are 4 other techniques, you can systematically alter and change your world. Then use this already natural gift you have of thinking backwards from the solution to the problem to see brand new opportunities. Okay, I'm going to do time for questions, and you're all welcome to get a book, of course, tonight. If you have questions about the book, I'll tell you a little bit about the book. It's published in 19 languages around the world. Very proud of it. So it was something that Jacob and I worked very hard on, and feel like we put the SAT method out there. We didn't hold anything back, right? There's no secret unlock that you have to know. You can truly read the book and you'll understand all the methods. Jacob and I are dear friends. He's a great guy. He considers himself, he's more of these true scientist, what we call the lab rat, whereas I'm more of the street rat, the practitioner, the guy that's been in the corporate world doing innovation projects. And we made a great pair working together, street lab and lab rat, and have a book that is enjoyed by people of all walks of life. It's not just a business book. What questions do you have about the method? Or about me, or about the book? Yeah.
What's your favorite technique to use, like identify?
You know, it's a popular question. That's like asking me, though, which one is my favorite child? They're like my 5 children. I will tell you they're all different. They all have their own potential. They all have their own place. So I'm careful not to have favorites. I will tell you one story. For a long time, I did not use the division technique at all. I didn't think I really needed to. I knew 4 techniques really well. And division just seemed like, what's the big deal? And I was very fortunate. One of our colleagues in Israel, a lady named Tamar Shalush, she was a colonel in the Israeli Defense Force, a real badass woman with 3 kids, loved her. And she said, Drew, you're going to learn division if it kills you. And nearly did. But she taught me division and forced me to use it. And I'm glad she taught me because it is extremely powerful. And it, by the way, is also the tool that my wife happens to use all the time. My wife, when I met her, beautiful woman, very talented, smart, not creative. She would tell you, not creative at all. Now she's one of the most creative people I know. And she always uses the division technique. It's scary how she solves problems naturally with the division technique. And she'll come up with some just great idea, and she'll look at me and laugh, and she'll say, now tell me what tool that was again. She doesn't even know. It's that ingrained in her. And this is how the patterns can become. They can become so ingrained in you that you use them naturally. And I use them naturally, but I don't have a favorite. They've all bailed me out at one time or another and saved me. Let's put it that. And I honor them all. I will say, too, there are certain tools we use for certain situations. That may be an even more important question. We tend to use task unification for highly constrained environments. We use multiplication with products that are simple. We use division on processes, on structures like music or a service process or a service. So we have our guidelines, but I don't have a favorite. Yes?
So you've been able to teach this to a lot of people in a lot of different kinds of people, and I'm wondering how the perception of the method has changed since its inception to now, I guess, considering.
Yeah, it's interesting. I taught it for 20 years to a lot of people. It literally changed my life, right? And I would say the method has not really changed at all. I have changed. The core idea of the method is still as pure today as it was back then. What improved in me is my understanding of the nuances of it, especially with young people and old people. So I've taught this to 3rd graders. 3rd graders use this very fluidly, not 2nd graders or below. They don't quite get it yet. The 3rd grade and above, 3rd grade and the CEOs. There's a struggle with CEOs, but I can get them eventually to learn it. What I've learned is where where they get in trouble with the method. For example, with subtraction, after you've learned subtraction, you may think you have it down, and then what you do, you go in to use it, and you think, okay, what can we get rid of? That's not how to use subtraction. Why? What will you succumb to if you do it that way? Fixing it. If I had to say, well, what can we get away with? She said, I'll get rid of the stand. We can do without that. I'm not going to let you off the hook tonight. I'm just going to keep arguing. That's what's changed. But by itself, again, this was based on world-renowned scientific research. Jacobs' research is published in the two most prestigious journals in the world, Nature and Science. And I was explaining to this man, I forgot your name. Andre, that's right. I was explaining to Andre. Jacobs' research was fascinating because he actually studied two types of highly innovative products. He studied highly innovative products that were successful in the market. Then he studied a group of highly innovative products that were failures in the market. Still innovative, but didn't succeed in the market. What he found was staggeringly important, that the highly innovative, successful products tend to follow these patterns, and the highly innovative, failed products don't. What does that mean to you? If you want highly innovative products that are successful in the market, what should you use? These patterns. That is groundbreaking. It's taking people a while but slowly but surely it's adopting. I've gone into many keynote programs around the world, and there'll be somebody back there like this, and a really ugly look in their face. And they're looking at me, and you know what they say to me? Why am I just hearing about this now? Oh, sorry. They're frustrated. People go, this is great, I see this works. Why am I just worrying about this now? If you want to be a creative person, practice is to set it up. By the way, you don't have to learn all 5 techniques at first. Learn one. Get really good at one. Practice it every day. And then it'll become, you may not even need to learn the others. We train our consultants, and sometimes they only learn one technique, and that's all they facilitate. They don't even facilitate the others. They're all powerful. That's why I don't have a favorite. They're just enormously powerful in a different way. What else? What other questions? More questions, Andre, especially with relation to TRIZ?
Yeah, it's not so much about the trees, it's about you being a street rat, you said.
Yeah.
Street rat to me means that a person who actually knows sales, right?
Yeah, straight up.
Do you use this particular process of yours for sales?
For sales?
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For sales?
Would you share some examples?
Sure. So we did a project once, I did a project once, I should say, for Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company. And they wanted to innovate their sales process. You know how pharmaceutical reps sell drugs? It's called detailing. The rep will call on a doctor's office, explain a new drug that they have, show comparison data, leave something behind, and leave. And then they go to the next doctor's office. It's called medical drug pharmaceutical sales. They wanted to reinvent it. And the technique that I used two. First one was division. The way it worked, I don't have a whiteboard in here, but the way it worked is you make a list of all your sales steps, 1 through, let's say, 20. Where does your sales process start? Identify a lead, call the lead, book an appointment, right? So I want you to write down the typical, normal, everything works fine process, all the way through to the sale. Explain the differences, objections, close, contract, implementation, right? List it all out from 1 to 20 with numbers. And then here's what you do. Pick a number between 1 and 20. Pick a number between 1 and 20.
7.
You take step 19 and you move it over to step 7. It's weird.
And that makes you think.
And it makes you think. Look, what is creativity? The Creativity Club here should know this. What is creativity? I will tell you. Creativity is nothing more than the sudden collision of 2 previously unrelated things. It's taking any 2 things that didn't belong together and you mash them up and see what you have. That's it. And Stephen Jobs knew that. He's quoted as saying, creativity is just combining things. Genrich Altshuler knew it. Aristotle knew it. We've known what creativity is for a long time. What this method does is it forces you to take two things that you wouldn't likely take together and mash them up, and then figure out a benefit. That's it. That's all this method is. You need this method, though, because you're not likely to take two things that don't belong together. Pick something in this room. Look around this room. Pick anything quick. The air vent. We're going to pick anything in this room quick. A chair. So an air vent and a chair, we're going to mash them together to create a new product. What does this new chair look like? What does it have? It has heated or cooled seats. It has vents on it to allow circulation. We have a new vent that has properties of a chair. What would it have? Maybe a little shelf on it to put things on it. Maybe little handles that you could pull yourself up or direct them. See what I'm doing? I'm taking the properties from one domain and imbuing it into the properties of the other to create some new product. You know how long I've done this exercise? Long time. And I've never heard that combination. You give me any two things, you can almost conceptualize anything. What the method does is it does that in a more successful way. Your odds are better if you use the patterns rather than just randomly pick two things around you. That's why you want to use the patterns. It'll do a better job for you. That's how you innovate in sales. The other thing we did with Lilly is we used task indication. We made a long list of all the social media apps out there in the world. There's hundreds of them, hundreds, not just Facebook, lots of them. And we just randomly picked one and we jammed it into step 7, picked another one, jammed it into step 8, picked another one. We imagined the entire sales process being done by social media apps of different types. Fascinating. That was a real groundbreaking deal. All right, I'll keep track of your time. What other questions do you have?
Are those steps applicable to personal life? A lot of our students struggle. They have, high level of stress, or they're overwhelmed with classes. Is that applicable to personal life and psychological issues as well?
Yes. So in your personal life, much like with my wife, she uses the division technique. She's particularly good with division through time, where she's able to rearrange time blocks. She looks at her life, her day in a stream, and is very fluid at taking problems and cutting them up. In regular creativity literature, you'll hear the term chunking down, chunking. You chunk, you chunk, you chunk. Division goes further, not just chunk down, but rearrange. So it's chunk it down into the small parts of the problem, but put it somewhere else where you don't expect it and see if you get a benefit. So in your personal life, what I think what's critical is there's things that can make you generally more creative. One of them is thinking inside the box, meaning constraining yourself. Constraints are not a barrier to creative output. You just have so many hours in a day, thank God. You just have so much money, you just have so much friends, distance, you're constrained in your life. That's good, because constraints are necessary for creativity to happen. So when you want to do a great job on an essay, for you to turn it in a week, give yourself no more than 2 hours to do it. And say, okay, it's 9 a.m., I'm going to have this done by 11 a.m. Now, you have a whole week, but why would you only give yourself to 11 a.m.? Because you'll do a better job. This is how I write books. I get up, I have coffee, I sit at my computer and say, I am going to produce 1,000 words by noon if it kills me. And I do, usually 2,000 words. But it's my constraint, it's not that much. 2,000 words is not that much. But the constraint on me, I force myself to get it done by noon, and I'm rushing, the clock's coming up, and I'm typing, and I get it done. I take a long walk, come back, do some editing, stop for the day. So use constraints. Recognize that constraints are not holding you back. They're actually propelling you. Harness constraints. What else? Anything? No? Yes.
What's the most surprising application of this that you've seen?
What's the most surprising application of this that I've seen? Well, I'll tell you what one of my favorite favorite examples, and I have so many. I used to keep a logbook. I've been doing this for so many years, and I keep a logbook. And I would be on the plane back from wherever, Germany, whatever, and I would write down, oh, this great idea. And I had like 5 of these things filled up, and I just had to stop. But I look back now every so often and laugh at these great ideas. I'm sure I could be a billionaire by now if I just took some of these ideas. But we were innovating. I was doing an example, and I asked somebody from the audience of something they wanted to innovate. And this lady in the audience, she sat there and she said, a yoga mat. I went, a yoga mat? Right? Have you ever used a yoga mat? Right? Not very complicated, is it? Just a yoga mat. So I said to another person, I want you to make one change to this mat, one change only. But I want you to make a change to it that actually makes it worse. So this one lady who said yoga mat, I looked at this other lady and said, make it worse. And she said, okay, let's imagine it's a yoga mat with glue on one side. Everybody started laughing and joking around and like, this is so silly. Now let me ask you. Imagine you had a yoga mat that was sticky on one side. What would be the benefit of a yoga mat that was sticky on one side? It wouldn't move around if you had it on the floor. It wouldn't move around. What else?
You could set up like a yoga station in your house or something.
You could set up a yoga station. You could store it up against the wall. What about when it's sticky and you're using it? How would that help you? You can maintain your posture, but it would be like a training device so your hands wouldn't slip. Maybe the yoga mat would draw outlines of the hands and the feet where you put them, like Twister. Right? You put them and it trains you. Maybe you have a collection of 6 or 7 of these mats that are, here's the dog down mat, and and they give you the correct position, holding you so you're safe. Look, imagine you're the world leader in yoga mats, and somebody comes and says, hey, we need some new ideas. And this young lady walks in and says, hey, I know we could put glue on one side. What would you think of her? That's stupid. Yet very quickly, what did I do? I wrote fixing this. I said, let's imagine it's a product, and we're going to pretend it has value. I just haven't found it yet. And when I tell myself that, then we all came up, the whole room, just like you did. A whole new line of yoga mats. It's a brilliant idea for such a simple thing like a yoga mat. Imagine what you can do to a jet engine. Imagine what you can do to children's toys or pharmaceuticals. It's just mind-boggling. My favorite quote about creativity and innovation is, could the greatest invention of all time be a method of invention? The answer is yes. And the answer is we already have it. It's called SIT. Okay, you guys want a book? Would you like a book? Yeah? Okay. Let's go ahead and get a book. I'm going to get over here.
Give a book and we'll have a picture.